Alright, welcome back. This is program number 6 in our Fast Track NLP training series. And at this point in our training series, we're going to move into what we might call interventions. How do you actually work with someone and make a change inside of them and assist them in making the kind of changes they want to make? Now, sub-modalities, to my way of thinking, falls into a series of interventions which we may call quick fixes. It's not that you have to take a detailed timeline therapy, personal history. We don't have to get into taking a detail of the accounts, of the stories, of the memories, really find out all of the basic stuff about the person. But we can do an intervention rather quickly and rather easily. Track 2, Introduction to Submodalities. Now let's talk about submodalities. Let me explain what are submodalities. The definition of submodalities is the following. Submodalities are how we encode and give meaning to modalities. You remember modalities are visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. And on top of that, we have our self-talk, which is auditory digital. And the submodalities are all subsets of those modalities. So for instance, if you make a picture in your mind, anything, that picture will contain certain characteristics. It will have certain brightness, a certain color, or maybe no color. It has a certain distance from you in your mind, on your inner screen. It has a certain location. It could be up, to the right, left, in the middle. It could be far away or close to you. And also those brightness, color, distance, and location are examples of what we call submodalities. Submodalities are extremely powerful in the short term because they make changes quickly and assist us to change what happens to us inside our brain. Stop for a moment now. Remember a time when you were totally motivated. Why don't you just go back to the time and remember a specific time when you were totally motivated? It doesn't matter. It could be in business, could be personal relationships, could be in any area where you want. Just remember that time when you were totally motivated, and then remember, as you remember that time, why don't you just step in your body and notice that you can actually feel the feelings of being totally motivated? If you do this correctly, you should have the same feeling of being absolutely and totally motivated, ready to go. So go right back now to that time. Notice that time when you were totally motivated. Float down in your body and look through your own eyes. If you see yourself in the picture, that's not what we're asking you to do. So get in your body, look through your own eyes, see what you saw, hear what you heard at the time, and feel the feelings of being totally motivated. Got it? Good. Now, please notice the feeling of being totally motivated. Notice that feeling that you have. And when you're ready, I would like you to, just for fun, take that picture and as quickly as it can, zoom it out from you. There it goes, on the wall, far away from you. Zoom it out, push it away, fast. And as it goes away from you, it becomes smaller and smaller and darker. So if you haven't done it already, take that picture and as quickly as, there it goes, becomes small, dark, and very far away from you. Yeah? Push it all the way across the room if you're in a room, or far away from you if you're outside. Shrink it down so it becomes the size of a postage stamp. And it's small, and it's dark, far away from you, in the other corner of the room. Now, do you have more feelings of motivation? Where are those feelings? Just notice. Notice if you had more feelings now, when the picture is all the way across the room, small and dark, or where you had more feelings when you were looking through your own eyes and you remembered exactly that time when you were totally motivated. If you did this correctly, and if you are like most people, you will probably have had most feelings when you were inside the picture, looking through your own eyes. Now we have used a few of the submodalities, and we will see what they are specifically in just a moment. But notice the size of that picture when it is across the room. It's the size of a postage stamp. Versus when you are in it. Notice that it has more different meaning to you. isn't it? Isn't it so? Notice that the feeling of motivation is present when you are inside it, and notice that it's not present when it's across the room and small and dark. Now, in a moment, not yet, but in a moment we're going to bring it back. So what we're going to do at my prompting, you'll have it come at you at 100 miles per hour. And as it comes back toward you, it becomes big and bright, and you're going to step right into it, and you will be again looking through your own eyes. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You are in it. You're looking through your own eyes. You are in it. Now notice that your feeling of motivation came back. Do you notice that? Well, if you are like most people, you probably noticed that. And now you already begin to notice the difference between submodalities is what makes a difference as to the meaning of that picture. Notice that the motivation picture was not motivating when he was far away from you. It didn't mean motivation to you when he was far away from you. So this leads us to a great idea, because what that means is actually when we get motivated when we're at work or when we're overly amped and overly motivated, we can take it and calm ourselves down if we need to, because we can simply push the picture of motivation away from us. But if we're not motivated to do something which we would like to do, which would be good for us to do, which is necessary to be done, we can do exactly the opposite. We can change that motivation. And that puts us in charge of when and how we want to be motivated. In addition, this was, by the way, just a little taste of what we can do with motivation. In addition, other submodalities and all of the submodalities allow us to be in charge of most of our internal representations. Like, what are we doing with them? What are we doing with the internal representations? Track 3, submodalities techniques. So if you are not already there, why don't you just now turn to page 25? Page 25 in the manual. There are a number of different techniques that we are going to be going through, and I think a number of things that I need to explain to you so you can make submodalities work the best way possible. So we have different techniques under the big umbrella of what we call submodalities. So let's recap. We said that submodalities are finer distinctions, or subsets if you wish, of modalities. They are distinctions, smaller distinctions of each and every one of our modalities. So on page 25 there are a number of techniques that we are going to be going through, and a number of things that I need to explain to you, and I'll do this right now. First of all, there is contrastive analysis. Yes, NLP has a lot of jargon, and this is just part of it. So this technique, which is called contrastive analysis, involves simply comparing two pictures. We're not doing anything with them, we're just comparing them. We're looking at one, we're looking at the other one, and we notice what are the differences between the two. Now, here is our next jargon. There is such thing as a driver in relation to submodalities. And drivers are the critical submodalities when we compare to internal representations, are those critical submodalities that actually make the most difference. Imagine that you're on a bus. You're traveling on a bus, and the driver of the bus is actually in charge. So when the driver decides to take the bus to the left and turns left, everybody on that bus is going to turn left. Another metaphor to represent what are the drivers in submodalities would be, imagine the CEO of a company, of a corporation. The CEO takes a decision, and everybody in the company follows that decision that's been taken by the CEO. So in a way we can say the drivers are the CEOs of submodalities. When the driver changes, this is important to remember, when the driver changes, all the other submodalities will change with it. So drivers are critical in our work with submodalities. So if you, for instance, compare ice cream, which most people like, and yogurt, which some people don't like, they're both similar kind of things. But if you love ice cream and, for example, didn't like or hated yogurt, if you compare the difference between these two pictures or these two internal representations, you could notice that there will be some submodalities that will be different. Because submodalities tell us also how we make the difference between what we like and what we dislike. It's not the content. Now you may think it's the content of the picture itself. Oh, it's ice cream, that's why I like it. No. If you would, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, if you were to take that picture of ice cream and change the qualities of that picture, therefore you will change the submodalities, you will end up maybe disliking ice cream. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm talking theoretically, unless you want to do it. We'll talk about that, as I said, in a moment. So to recap, contrastive analysis simply compares two internal representations, two pictures that you hold inside your head about two different things, makes a comparison and notices where are the differences. In relation to this, we have discussed the issue of drivers, which are the most important of those submodalities, and we'll figure out in a moment how to discover which ones are those. But drivers are those very important submodalities that when they change, every other submodality in that picture will change with them. Next technique is called mapping across. Of course, in order to do this technique, we need to discover the drivers, which is the purpose of doing first contrastive analysis before we do mapping across. And then mapping across presupposes that we're changing the submodalities of one of those internal representations into the submodalities of the other. So for example, if you wanted and if you loved ice cream and hated yogurt, like in our example, you wanted to not eat ice cream because you're eating too much ice cream, or for whatever reason you want to give it up, what you could do is you could elicit the submodalities of ice cream, and then you could elicit the submodalities of yogurt. Thus you have now two different pictures. On both of them, you have certainty that you know the distinctions, the submodalities of those pictures. So then you would change the submodalities of the one that you like, the ice cream, if you wanted to get rid of it, if you wanted to give it up. You would change the submodalities of ice cream into the submodalities of the yogurt picture. And theoretically, then you would like ice cream less, or not at all. So mapping across involves the changing of one set of drivers into another set of drivers, which essentially changes the whole set of submodalities, and therefore it changes the whole internal representation and the meaning attached to that internal representation. And this is important. Good. Next technique in submodalities is called a swish pattern. And that involves replacing actually one internal representation or one internal picture with another. This process directionalizes the series of internal representations so that the desired state is more common than the present state, and we'll talk about how to do that when we get there. There are also some other dissociative techniques which involve shifting a point of view and viewing a specific internal representation from another position or another location, and that will change the meaning that we attach to that internal representation. This technique, that dissociative technique that I'm discussing right now, is frequently used to take the charge of a negative emotion. For instance, a phobia, as in the phobia model. And also this is what happens during timeline therapy in a number of different cases. And also we have the technique called perceptual positions, which simply says the perception of a certain situation can be changed by shifting viewpoints and viewing a specific internal representation of an event or a person from one of three different positions. In this situation, the first position is looking through your own eyes from your point of view. Second position is looking through another person's eyes, usually the person you might have a conflict with. And a third position is involving the entire scene from a dissociated position, say, for instance, above the entire event. This is also very useful as a dissociative technique, and it's useful for incorporating new learnings. Those are the 5 major submodalities techniques that we're going to be learning in this segment. And we'll go through each one and one by one, yeah? And what I would like to do is to talk to you about what it is that you need to know in order to make this work. There are some things that actually make submodalities work. Now let's look at page 26 and discuss each and every one of them. So we're on page 26. Track 4, triggers. One of the major issues when we work with submodalities is to find the trigger that kicks off that set of submodalities distinctions. What does this mean in English? It means that, let's think of a behavior, for example. A behavior starts somewhere. It's not happening all the time, 24/7. A behavior begins at a certain point. Now that very moment of beginning of the behavior is called the trigger. What triggers that behavior? What makes that behavior kick and begin, kick off and begin? So the trigger is what it causes to make that difference inside of you. And so if we're going to be working on mapping across, the technique that I mentioned previously, by the way, don't get confused. Mapping across is the NLP jargon term. The English expression of the same thing is like to dislike technique. So mapping across and like to dislike are one and the same thing. Track 5, submodalities checklist. So in order to elicit those distinctions of each of our modalities that belong to our internal representations, or our internal pictures if you wish, we have to start with the list of submodalities. And this is in the manual on page 29. So if you think of a certain visual picture, any kind of picture, think of something, pick a picture, think of something, don't change it, just stay steady with it. What we can do is to begin to ask ourselves several questions. For instance, is that picture black and white, or is it colored? Is it near to you? As you look at the picture, is it near to you or is it far away? Is it bright or is it dim? What's the location? Is it right in front of you? Is it up? Is it to the right? Is it to the left? Is it down? What's the size of the picture? Is it small? Is it life size? Is it bigger than life size? The issue of associated and dissociated is very simple to understand, so pay attention now. Associated, as you saw, simply means you are looking through your own eyes. You are in your body. You are looking through your own eyes. Dissociated means you see yourself, you see your body in the picture. So you're looking at yourself. When you're looking through your own eyes and you are associated, you don't see your body because you are in it. So you are either in it or you are seeing yourself. That's associated or dissociated. Is the picture focused or defocused? Is the focus changing or is it steady? Is the picture framed or is it panoramic? Does it have a frame around it? or is just simply panoramic? Is the picture a movie or is it a still? If it's a movie, is it fast, normal speed, slow? How is it? And then what's the contrast? Is it really high contrast or low contrast or just normal? Is it 3D or is it flat? And what angle are you viewing the picture from? Now, are there a certain number of pictures? Do they shift? Then you see in the box, the next question is, are there any sounds that are important? And that leads us to the auditory submodalities. So far, we have gone through the visual ones. So on the auditory submodalities, we have location. Location of what? Location of the sound. Where is it coming from? What direction? Is it the sound internal? Do you hear it inside you? Or is it external, coming from outside? Is it loud or is it soft? Is it fast or is it slow? Is it the pitch high or is it low? What's the tonality? What's the timbre? Are there pauses? What's the cadence? What's the duration of those sounds? Is there anything unique about the sound? And now as we look further down on the left-hand side, we see that there are any feelings that are important. That's the next question. And that leads us, this question, are there any feelings that are important, leads us into the kinesthetic submodalities. What are the kinesthetic submodalities? Well, location. Location of what? Location of the feeling, because we're talking feelings here. Location, what is it in your body? Is it in your chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your arm? What is it? Does it have a size, that feeling? Does it have a particular shape? Some people describe a particular shape to the feeling. Is it intense? What's the intensity? Is it a steady feeling? Does it have movement? What's the duration? Does it have a vibration to it? Does it have pressure or heat? Or it feels like it weighs a lot? Does it have weight? Now, there are some submodalities that are very important and some that are less important. All submodalities techniques can be done with a restricted number of submodalities. The whole list that we just went through is necessary when we do modeling. Modeling is a process that we learn in the Master Practitioner, and it's not necessary for the successful completion of all the submodalities techniques that we learn in the NLP Practitioner. So therefore, please do me a favor. Take a pen, maybe a red one, and draw a line under the submodality called movie or still in the visual category. So you see there, it's written movie or still. Draw a line underneath that. So you know you stop there. You don't pass that point for all the techniques that we do in the practitioner. Also draw a line, please, under loud of soft, which is the fourth category of submodalities in the auditory section. And also under intensity, which is the fourth submodality in the kinesthetic section. Draw that line there, and that's your signal that you need to stop there. Track 6, submodalities elicitation. At this point, it's probably important for you to hear a submodalities elicitation. So we've actually asked Lori to assist Ted. Ted will demonstrate this. And she will come up with a picture, and Ted will do a real submodalities elicitation. As Ted does this, please notice the speed with which Ted elicits the submodalities. This is another important point to make submodalities work. Remember, we talked about triggers, finding the triggers. The second important distinction that you need to remember always when you work with submodalities is the issue of speed. Human mind is not designed to linger about slowly. We move from one thought to another, to another, to another rather fast. In fact, speed light fast. Thoughts move around very, very quickly. And if you are not fast enough when you elicit submodalities, the person you are eliciting the submodalities with, your client or somebody else, that person's mind will begin to wander somewhere else. And then your elicitation will be imprecise and incorrect.
And so, Lori, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
And I wonder if you can remember a time when you were totally motivated.
Yes.
Can you remember a specific time?
Yes.
And as you go back to that time now, what I'd like you to do is to float down into your body and see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feelings of being totally motivated.
Okay.
Good. Now, as you remember this picture of motivation, is it in black and white or color?
Color.
Is it near or far?
Near.
Is it bright or dim?
Bright.
What's the location?
Um,
Is it like in the center of the screen?
Center of the screen.
How big is the picture?
Life size.
Uh-huh. And is it associated or dissociated?
Associated.
Is it focused or defocused?
Focused.
Is the focus changing at all?
Yes.
So it changes focus.
Yes.
Is it framed or panoramic?
Panoramic.
And is it a movie or still?
Movie.
Are there any sounds that are important?
Quiet, watery sounds.
Oh, that's nice. What's the location?
Close.
Are they coming from inside you or outside you?
From inside.
Uh-huh. And are they fast or slow?
Slow.
Good. Are there any feelings that are important?
Yes.
What's the location of the feeling?
The middle of my chest.
Uh-huh. And how big is it? You can show me.
Like the size of the sun.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what's the shape?
Circular.
And is it intense or not intense?
Radiating.
Oh, good. Is it steady?
Moving.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Laura. You can step out of the picture now and come on back in the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, good.
All right. Well done. That was an example of how to elicit submodalities. So when you are eliciting submodalities, you should do it that quickly. So you notice that our client was quite fast in her answers, and your client may or may not be that fast in their answers. However, you, the coach, need to be really fast. The moment the client gives you the answer, instantly you fire the next question. Move as quickly as you possibly can. You notice how quickly Ted moved when you elicit all those submodalities. The downside is that if you don't move that quickly, the client's picture could also change. Or they, in the process of thinking other thoughts, they could bring in another picture. Or they can have simply completely different subjects they're thinking on. So you must move really quickly to keep the client's mind focused on the picture you want, and do it as quickly as Ted has demonstrated. Good. Track 7. Like-dislike script. Now let's turn to page 27. But before we do, let me ask you a question. Did you ever have a food that you really liked a lot and you wish you didn't? Maybe you went to the doctor and the doctor said to you, maybe you shouldn't eat, insert here, whatever the doctor would have said. Or maybe you are drinking too much soda drinks and you go, okay, that's enough. I'm really over the top. Or maybe you are eating too much bread or too many sweets, or I don't know. A food that you're eating a lot and you know it's not good for you, but somehow you can't resist it. And when you start, then you eat too much. Did it ever happen to you? Well, what would happen if you could, in a simple way, using this mapping across or like to dislike process, get rid of that? If it acts like an addiction to you, means you are not in control again, see? So what I'm suggesting that there is a way of changing that and putting you in control of the food or the drink rather than vice versa. Would that be of any interest to you if that were to be the case? Because this thing really works. So if it's okay, let's see how to do it. The submodalities like to dislike script is what we use to change the submodalities from something that the person likes too much into something that the person dislikes. For example, I mentioned earlier you can use ice cream and maybe against yogurt. Somebody likes ice cream and they don't like yogurt. It's just an example because the qualities of the ice cream and yogurt are quite similar. They are both kind of like the same color, the same texture, but there is a major difference in how a person holds that in their minds, how they encode, the coding. It's like the computer coding, yeah? Our brains have a coding, and those are called submodalities, So how do we encode the difference between the two? No, it's not the smell. No, it's not the look. No, it's not the taste either. It's those submodalities. Therefore, let's look at page 27 and let's look at the script. So here is what you need to look at when you do this. On page 27, we have the submodalities like to dislike script. I repeat, this is the same process as mapping across. We might as well set submodalities mapping across script. Just underneath the title, it says here, whenever you do submodalities work, you should use the submodalities checklist, which is on page 29, because you want to be precise and accurate. Speaking of that, precision and accuracy. Submodalities are fine distinctions. I mean, how fine are this? How much more of a distinction you want than just a little bit of difference in color, or maybe a tiny little bit of difference in distance, or maybe a big difference in distance. But these are all very small distinctions in terms of how we encode different things, whether we like them or we dislike them. Therefore, you need to learn from now on to be extremely precise with your language. That's why it says here, this adds to your precision and accuracy under the big title on page 27. Let's take an example. Let's say you ask somebody, can you make a picture of ice cream? Listen, please listen very carefully to the language. Can you make a picture presupposes that somebody makes it up. Presupposes construct. Somebody constructs that picture. Now, by the way, we're not after that. Because if a person loves a food too much, they already have that picture. Another example. Let's say, and I've seen this in one of our trainings. I've seen a person that was a student that was involved in doing this process, and the practitioner asked him this wrong question: can you make a picture of peanuts? And the student, in all sincerity, said, I can make a lot of pictures of peanuts. Very good answer. Now, which one of those is the picture we want to work with, you see? So as long as we don't ask the question correctly, we're not going to get a correct answer. So what's the question? We're going to see it right down on the page. The point I'm making here is that you need to respect the languaging in those scripts very precisely, because if you don't, you're not going to get the results. And then you're going to say the same modalities like to dislike doesn't work. It works every single time if you are correct and precise. Good, let's see. In brackets, it said generally it is a good idea to ask, is it all right for your unconscious mind to make this change today and for you to be aware of it consciously? Now, why are we asking this question? Because if the client wants to make the change at the conscious level, but at the unconscious level the client is not congruent, then probably the intervention will not succeed, or even if it succeeds, the unconscious mind will undo it. Therefore, we want to hear a congruent yes from the client. Now, what's a congruent yes? I just demonstrated. Yes. If the client says, yeah, I think so. Now, is that congruent? It doesn't sound congruent. It sounds like part of the client wants, part of the client doesn't want. See, you don't want that. Somewhere there is a part in the client that doesn't want to make the shift, doesn't want to give up maybe that food or that drink, which is okay. We're not forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do. But don't proceed unless the answer to the question, is it all right for your unconscious mind to make this change today and for you to be aware of it consciously, is a absolute, congruent, resounding yes. Absolutely, I'm ready, I want to do it. Number 1 on page 27. Can you think of something that you like but wish you did not? The client says yes. Wait there for the client to say yes. And you say, good. Ask, what is it? The client tells you. And here is the question. Underline it, put it in, highlight it, and remember this question. As you think about how much you like that food or drink, do you have a picture? Notice the words. I didn't say, can you make a picture? Can you remember a picture? Make a picture? Get a picture? No. I asked, do you have a picture? Because we want the picture that the client already has. The picture that represents how much they like that food. I cannot stress this issue enough. If you do it correctly, it will succeed. So we want it to be successful. The moment the client gives you the answer, yes, I have a picture, you take your submodalities checklist on page 29 and elicit all the submodalities. Very fast, the way you saw Ted demonstrating it. Number 2, can you think of something which is similar, but which you absolutely dislike? For example, ice cream and yogurt. They are similar, but the client says, yes, I can think of something similar. Then you say, good. What is it? The client tells you. And then again, underline the next question. As you think of how much you dislike that, do you have a picture? Then you elicit the submodalities. Now, it is a good idea and probably easier to get this technique done if the location of the two pictures is different. Meaning a picture is right in front, the other one is up right or left down, but the locations are different. It's very important. Does it mean that it won't succeed if the locations are kind of similar? No, it doesn't mean that. But your rate of success will increase if the locations are different. Then at number 3, it says change the submodalities of picture number 1 into submodalities of picture number 2. And then lock it in place. You say, how do you lock it in place? You just say, you know the sound the Tupperware makes when it seals, just like that, lock it right in there. Good. The client does that. Then you break state. Talk about something else for a moment. How's the weather outside? Nice pullover. How's it going? Do you enjoy this? Anything. Change the subject, in other words. Briefly, for 10, 15, 30 seconds, yeah? Then you go to number 5 and you say, now, what about the thing that you used to like? The client thinks of the things they used to like, and you should see by calibration with your sensory acuity that the client's reaction to that picture is different. And ask, how is it different? Number 5 was the test, and now we move to number 6, which is future pace. Imagine a time in the future when you might be tempted to eat that again, or, of course, if you work on a drink, you say, drink that again. And what happens now? Track 8, drivers and universals. Now that we have gone through the like to dislike or mapping across script, let's briefly backtrack and talk about 2 issues that you have heard in the demonstration Ted did, and are those things that make the difference between a successful mapping across or not. In fact, they are so important and make a difference, again, in all submodalities techniques. Track number 8, drivers and universals. We've seen the drivers we can find by contrastive analysis. We look what's different between 2 sets of pictures. Once we elicit the submodalities, we just compare them. We look, well, okay, where is the location? By the way, location is probably one of the most important drivers. In the top preference, location is at number 1. If the location is different, even slightly different, but even more if it's widely different, then you are ensured that location is the driver. Aside from location, associated, dissociated, and distance could also be drivers. Does that mean that other submodalities couldn't be drivers? No, it doesn't mean that. But in terms of percentage of people So percentual-wise, location is a driver for upwards of 90% of the people. Now let me say something about drivers. Drivers are mostly visual. I'm not knocking down people who are kinesthetic. It doesn't mean that if you are kinesthetic as the preferred modality, your drivers are necessarily kinesthetic. And I want to quote here Dr. Milton Erickson. Dr. Milton Erickson said at some point that kinesthetic, as in kinesthetic representational system, is a derived representational system that comes off a visual or an auditory. This is a very important quote because what it tells us is that drivers are mostly in the visual category or auditory category. So, which also tells us that if we change the drivers and the visual, all the other submodalities, including the rest of the visual and the auditory and the kinesthetic, will change together with the driver, will change into the other set of submodalities. And we are on slide number 52, but still on page 9 of the slide section. The next thing that really makes submodalities work is the elicitation of universals. So when you work with someone in shifting their experience, the question is, what are you going to utilize to make that shift really easy to do? In what manner, or what direction are we going to shift that experience? And here is something very interesting. If you take and connect a set of submodalities distinctions, which is kind of blah, to another set of submodalities, you're going to get a blah result. So what do I mean by that? Let's see. Instead of using a powerful set of submodalities that will be full of meaning for the client, you would use something bland, something that doesn't mean any much for anything important for the client, and then exactly that's the type of result you will get. You want to hook up the final result to something that's very powerful, a set of submodalities that's powerful. Therefore, universals are extremely good for this purpose. Now, what is a universal? This is another piece of jargon we need to define. A universal experience is generally a generalized experience because the person, when he hears this, immediately can connect to that. The person not only that connects to it, but it also has a lot of meaning. When we evoke a universal experience from the person, they could even connect with that even if they personally didn't have one. Here is an example of the universal experience, which probably everybody can connect with. Every person on this planet has a belief that used to be true but is no longer true. So everybody has a belief that used to be true but is no longer true. For example, when you were 13 years old, you believed, listen to the language again, I am 13 years old. But where is the belief I am 13 years old now? It's no longer true unless you stayed 13, which is kind of hard to do. Anyway, so the belief I am 13 years old used to be true. However, is no longer true. So everybody has a belief like this. It's a universal experience. Another universal experience is the sun is coming up tomorrow. Not necessarily that we'll see it, maybe it's a cloudy day, but the sun is coming up tomorrow. That's another universal belief. And here is a good one, a stoplight and a go light. So you're driving or you're walking, or you're in a bus, doesn't matter. And the traffic light in front turns yellow and then turns red. What do? You stop. Stop all the time? Yep, you stop. It's red. At least you should stop, even if it's 2 a.m. But then you're waiting at a traffic light and the light turns green. What do? You go. Whether you're pedestrian crossing the road or whether you're driving a car, you just go. It's green. Pretty much everybody who has experienced traffic lights is able to refer to the go light, stop light set of submodalities. Which means that if we elicit the submodalities of will if no longer true, or of the sun's coming up tomorrow, or the go light, the green light, go light, and the traffic light, we're going to end up with a very powerful set of submodalities. Because everybody, it's a generalized experience. It's a universal. So therefore, if we do this, we're going to end up with a very powerful set of submodalities, which we can use later on for our purposes, for our techniques. So together with drivers, it's very important to relay as much as you can on universals. These two issues will make a difference in your success with submodalities. For any one of the examples that I gave you, the moment they say, yes, I have the belief that the sun's coming up tomorrow, your next question would be, of course, when you think of the sun coming up tomorrow, do you have a picture? And then, of course, this is the way you're going to elicit the submodalities. Because the client absolutely believes it's true. So that's very powerful. The client's absolutely certain. It has a certain amount of certainty that goes with that picture. And so if we can get that set of submodalities where we have that absolute certainty that it will happen, for the person this will create a very powerful set of submodalities with an enormous amount of power into it. Let's talk again about the go light. If the light turns green and it's safe, you go. Now, if you elicit a set of submodalities of this go light experience, you end up with a very motivating, let's go, it's green, move. Set of submodalities that you can utilize for anything else. Let's say that at work, somebody is not really motivated, doesn't get going with a project. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's something around the house that you know you should do, but you don't feel like doing. I'm not really motivated to do that. What you can do is to elicit the set of submodalities of the go light and then change the submodalities of that project that you need to do, but you're not really going on it. That set of submodalities into the submodalities of the green light. And all of a sudden, the project that wasn't moving before, all of a sudden it gets the oomph and the power of the green light, go light. And you're going to find yourself getting going with it and finishing it rather quickly and without feeling bad about it. So you see, the utilization of universals could come in very handy. Aside from drivers and universals, there is one more thing that makes submodalities work like a charm. And it doesn't need a slide, it doesn't need its whole explanation. We already touched upon it. But the third element that makes submodalities really work is speed. Remember, you really got to do those submodalities fast. When Ted did the demonstration, you noticed that he did it very quickly. And in doing that, he kept the client moving forward. So I think the next thing that we want to do, we want to demonstrate the process of contrastive analysis and mapping across.
Okay, so we want to thank Lori for joining us once again.
Thank you.
And what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the submodalities like to dislike script, but I'm going to take a few moments to elicit the submodalities and also to talk to you as you listen to the tapes so you'll notice exactly what I'm doing. And the first thing I need to do is I actually need to do what's called contrastive analysis. So let's find out what Lori likes that she'd like to dislike. What do you like that you want to dislike?
Chocolate.
Okay, you want to dislike chocolate. So I'm going to take page 29 and right over number 1 on page 29, I'm going to write chocolate. And is there something which you really dislike?
Does it have to be a food?
Well, it should be, but it doesn't absolutely have to be. Is there something you really dislike that it is similar to chocolate in terms of consistency?
Well, how about dog waste?
Okay. All right. So we'll call that dog poo as something you dislike. Okay. Lori, that's good. So can you, when you think of how much you love chocolate, do you have a picture?
Yes.
Good. You got it?
Yep.
Is it in black and white or color?
Color.
Is it near or far?
Near.
Is it bright or dim?
Bright.
What's the location on the screen? Is it in the center or is it up or down or to the left or
It's
right?
in the center, touching my mouth.
Oh, so it's really close then, isn't it?
Yes.
It's really close. And how big is the picture?
Life size.
And are you looking through your own eyes?
Yes.
Okay, that's associated then. Is it focused or defocused?
Focused.
And is it framed or panoramic?
Panoramic.
And is it a movie or still?
Still.
Okay, are there any sounds that are important?
Wrappers opening.
Wrappers opening, okay. And what's the location? Is that inside or outside?
Inside my head.
It's inside. And is it loud or soft?
A pleasant loudness.
Okay. And are there any feelings that are important?
Yes.
Where are they?
And comforting in my stomach.
Okay, I'm writing down under auditory. And then comforting in the stomach. And
warm.
it's warm, huh? Okay, warm. And what's this? And it's in the stomach. What size is it?
It's the size of a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Are you thinking of Reese's peanut butter cups?
Yep.
Okay, all right, good. Let's clear the screen. Now we've got our first set of submodalities of chocolate done. Now I'd like you to think of dog waste.
Okay.
And why don't you go ahead and get the picture of dog waste?
Okay.
And is it in black and white or color?
Color.
Is it near or far?
Far.
And is it bright or dim?
Medium.
Medium, okay. And is it in the center of the screen or what's the location?
It's farther out to the bottom right.
Farther out and bottom right. Okay, good. What's the size?
It's regular size.
So life size.
Life size.
Uh-huh. And is it associated or dissociated? You looking through your own eyes?
Associated.
Okay. And is it focused or defocused?
Defocused.
And is it panoramic?
Yes.
And is it movie or still?
Still.
Are there any sounds that are important?
A squishing sound.
And is that inside or outside your head?
Outside on my foot.
On your foot, okay. And are there any feelings that are important?
Like jolting, irritating.
Jolting.
Jolt in my body.
Where in your body?
Kind of going straight through, like a shiver.
A shiver, okay. Shiver, and it goes from where to where?
From the right side of the top of my head to the left side of the bottom of my foot.
Wow, now, thank you, Lori. You can clear the screen. Those are real clear submodalities. Let's stop for a moment and just notice what the difference is between these. If you were following along with me with your own submodalities checklist, if you were actually taking the notes, which you could go back and get your page 29 and follow along with me if you wanted to in terms of the elicitation. But here's what I noticed. They both were in color, but one was farther away than the other. The chocolate was quite a bit closer. The brighter dim, the chocolate was brighter, and the dog waste was medium in terms of being out there. The chocolate was in the center, and the dog waste was down far out and down into the bottom right. The size, the associated, dissociated, and the focused or defocused, the panoramic, and the movie or still, or framed in panoramic, movie and still, were all essentially the same. The auditory was different for each one, and the kinesthetic was different for each one. Now, what I just did is called contrastive analysis. It's discovering the difference between two pictures or between two internal representations. Once we've done the contrastive analysis, we want to do the switch. We want to switch the submodalities of chocolate into the submodalities of the dog waste so that when we've done that, theoretically, it should change how the person feels about the thing that they wanted to dislike. So let's do it. So Lori, thanks for being our subject today. Can you bring up the picture of chocolate once again and have it on the screen.
Okay.
And tell me when you've got it there.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now, can you move it out so that it's not so close to you and it's just about as far away as the dog waste was?
Okay.
And can you turn down the brightness so it's about medium brightness?
Okay.
And now I'd like you to take the location and move it out so that it's down to the bottom right.
Okay.
And then just like the way Tupperware seals, I'd like you to seal it right in there. You know the sound that Tupperware makes when it seals?
Yeah.
I'd like you to seal it right in there.
Okay.
Good. Now, go ahead and clear the screen. And now all I did to start with was the visual submodalities. I didn't actually switch the auditory or the kinesthetic submodalities because what I want to do is I want to see, when I ask her some questions, if it's any different. Because my thinking here would be that probably the drivers, since there was so much difference between the chocolate and the dog poo, my feeling is that the drivers will have been contained in the first set of visual submodalities. So let's ask Lori. Lori, how do you feel about chocolate at the moment?
Well, the first instinct was the habit was to move towards it, but then I jumped away from it.
And when you bring up your picture of chocolate, are there any sounds that are there?
Well, I kind of have that squishing feeling.
Good. And did you have the shiver?
Yep.
That's good. That's very good. Okay, thanks, Laurie. Thanks for being our guest here. And we'll ask you to come back and do a couple of other demos with you if we might. So that's actually the submodalities like to dislike. And we tested. We did the last step there on the bottom. It said test. Now, what about that thing you used to like, and how is it different? Now, that's so simple. The process, there's not a lot involved. You just need to be precise in terms of your language and find out the difference between the drivers and the submodalities. Dog poo is actually quite a bit like chocolate, so they had sort of a similarity, and that's kind of nice because that allows the submodalities to stand out even more. Now, you'll notice what I did was I did it very quickly. We didn't have her operate on a single picture for a very long time, and that's because you want to move through it as quickly as you can. Remember that the unconscious mind learns quickly. The unconscious mind learns very, very quickly. So in order for these things to work the best, we've really got to move through them as quickly as we possibly can. In other words, you got to do it fast. Now, if you'd like to try that, all you'll need is page 27 and page 29, and you can do that with a friend. You might even be able to do it with yourself as long as you were clear about what the submodalities were.
Track 10, doing NLP by yourself. There are always questions whether you can do NLP on yourself or not, or whether if you do NLP on yourself, you are really a good practitioner or not. Not necessarily. There are techniques in NLP that some people can do on their own, and there are techniques in NLP that some people need help with. Not because they couldn't, but because certain reasons. For instance, let me give you an example. I am very good at doing parts integration on my own. And when we get to parts integration, we'll explain to you what needs to happen in order for you to be really good at doing parts integration on your own. But I'm not really good at doing submodalities on my own because my mind goes so fast. I'm a really, really fast thinker. And so I need somebody to hold me back and in the process. And so I need somebody to do it with me. So I'd like to quote Gregory Bateson, if you remember who Gregory Bateson was. He's one of the people who worked on ecology and was a great inspiration for NLP. And Bateson said a man cannot long be his own psychotherapist. So one of the things I think about doing NLP on your own is that you are you. And if you are inside your own thinking box. And so you can't have the objectivity, the neutral point that someone else might have about you. And since you don't have the objectivity that someone else might have about you, then the fact is that you're still going to be in your own model of the world, and you're still going to be inside your own thinking. Whereas someone outside of you can usually gain a little more objectivity about what is it that you're working on. So although it's possible you could do NLP techniques on your own, it's quite possible you might want to work with someone else. In either case, it's kind of a fun little shift. And so in regards to shift, coming back to like to dislike, we often get this question in a training. Can you shift dislike to like? Theoretically, you can. But there are many other ecological considerations which you might want to make sure you take care of before